Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're very excited to kick off our first expert panel, Thriving with Neurodivergence. And this conversation is for anyone who's navigating life as a neurodivergent, anyone who is curious if you are neurodivergent, or maybe you're supporting a friend, a partner, a colleague, a loved one. The insights and tools shared here will be applicable to all. And then I want to introduce our three incredible speakers. Each of them we are so lucky to have. They bring a powerful mix of lived experience, professional insights, and just their own unique creative energy. So we'll explore challenges, strengths, just kind of really a raw view of neurodivergent life. And so, first, I'll introduce Jennifer Salzman. Jennifer is an ADHD advocate and mindfulness coach. And Jennifer is also the founder of A Mighty Rebel, where she helps people with ADHD move from overwhelm to empowerment. And then I'll also share their links. All three of these speakers have incredible social media presences and are just great content creators. So if you want to stay inspired all year round, you should follow all of these speakers. I'll post them in the chat as we go. Okay, next one. So, Elena Carroll. So, Elena is a late diagnosed autistic advocate and writer. And then Elena's journey through diagnosis has led her in a place of healing and self acceptance. And now she shares those experiences across social media and is also writing her first book. So, claps and hearts to Elena. Amazing. Excited to see you through that. And then let's go to Natasha. So, Natasha M. Nurse is a speaker, podcaster, and neurodivergent pathfinder. And so, Natasha brings a powerhouse blend of her legal expertise as an attorney, plus storytelling, plus her lived experience, and she's a DEI consultant and advocate. So she's really big on creating inclusive spaces for all brains and bodies, which we'll dive into in a little bit. So with that, let's start with some applause and love for our panelists, and then I'll ask our first question. Cool. Okay. So to kick things off, I'd love to know how each of you personally define neurodivergence. So what does it mean to you in your own life? And Elena, let's start with you.
Oh, first speaker. Um, Thank you for that intro, by the way. I really appreciate all that. I would honestly describe neurodivergence as kind of not following the typical default settings society is built around. For my own life, I think it has shaped how I connect with people, how I work, how I care for myself. It's obviously not something that I will ever overcome or grow out of, but it's something that I'm continually trying to learn, understand, um, maybe even respect and work with myself. It's definitely not been an easy journey, but I think my neurodivergence has given me a sense of purpose in trying to help others feel less alone. And I think if someone asked me today, like, if I could have a neurotypical brain, would I take it? I no longer would say yes. So that would be my account of neurodivergence.
Oh, thank you, Elena. Very powerful. And let's pass the mic to Natasha.
Thank you. Yeah. So I've seen folks define neurodivergence as a space that is inclusive for those who are neurodivergent and neurotypical. So it's kind of like a world that includes people that are, I completely agree with Elena, like not on the default setting, whose brains operate and process information differently. But I think what the key is the recognition and the acknowledgement that difference is not problematic or something that we need to make space for, rather a way to appreciate how to look at life through different lenses and try to get the understanding of what each of those lenses provide, and really kind of like appreciate diversity and inclusion, not from just the nomenclature but from the human experience. Because whether you're neurodivergent or not, your brain is your brain, one of one. It means we're all unique and special. And so how do we make sure we curate and design a life for that?
Mm, such an important point, Natasha. Thank you. And Coach Jennifer.
Hi, I'm excited to be here and I see familiar faces, so hello to those of you that I know. Um, Neurodivergence to me is just, I move through the world a little bit differently than everybody else. And the beautiful thing after getting a diagnosis pretty late in my life is that I stopped asking, like, what is wrong with me, and started asking, what do I need so that I can adjust to the world around me.
Mm, yeah. Wow. Thank you. Powerful, Coach Jennifer. Okay. And then let's transition into all of your personal journeys. So, your journey through diagnosis, discovery, now advocacy. How has, let's say, diagnosis shaped the way that you show up today? And let's
You're
go,
asking
we'll
me?
do
Um,
Or
Coach Jennifer since you're on my screen. Yeah.
So I was diagnosed at the age of 41, and that was 12 years ago. So you can do the math. And I didn't know what ADHD was. I was not looking for a diagnosis. I was seeing a therapist for other mental health issues, but I kept having the same complaints, right? I can't get my shit together. I'm having trouble with my relationships. I'm drinking too much alcohol. I just everything. I felt like I didn't get it, but I didn't know what it was. And so the therapist said, "Well, have you ever been assessed for ADHD?" And I was quite offended, and I said, "Absolutely not. The last thing I need is another mental health issue to deal with." But after being assessed, I'm off the charts ADHD. And there was kind of a moment of grief slash, oh my God, so this is what has been wrong with me for all of these years. And the grief was thinking, gosh, had I known, how might my life have been different? But once I got the diagnosis, it took me a little while to really understand what ADHD actually is and how it showed up for me in my life. And one of the things that I realized had to go was the alcohol, because I thought I was using it for many, many years to self-medicate because I thought it was helping. But as we know, alcohol is an addictive drug. And so if you're relying on that to cope, it's really easy to develop an unhealthy relationship with that substance. So it kind of occurred to me that maybe alcohol isn't helping as much as I thought it was. And so once I removed the alcohol from my life, then I could really understand how ADHD shows up for me and develop healthier coping skills so that I can manage my intense emotions without poisoning myself with alcohol.
Yeah, I appreciate your vulnerability, Jennifer. Natasha, let's hand it
Yeah.
over to you.
Absolutely. So, all my life, I grew up in Manhattan, New York. Shout out to any New Yorkers on the call. I moved to Arizona, very happy to be in Arizona, a lot of peace here. And for me, my journey started with figuring out I have autism and ADHD by becoming a mother. So always felt like an alien. I always struggled with connecting with people, never understanding why people either really loved me or were completely perturbed by me. I'm definitely like a 0 to 100 kind of a person. And when I became a mother and had my son, he's a baby just like anyone else, right? Would cry, but his response, like his crying, really caused some like really dark feelings inside. It was as if his pain was unbearable to me. And thankfully I do have supportive people in my village, like his godfather, who was like, you might want to speak to someone about this, right? Like, why are you having such dark thoughts? What's going on? Why is this happening? And yeah, little did I know that there were certain auditory sensitivities, one to baby crying, but not the only one that I have, that then led to the conversation of, yeah, meeting with a psychologist, doing the 2-day diagnosis and figuring out autism, ADHD. And what I think has been the most interesting part about this journey is that, and this is where I think motherhood or becoming a parent is so powerful, that like I needed to know that these were the labels that attached to me, not just to have labels, right? Because it's more than that. That's just the beginning part of the journey. It's more so like, thank God I became a mother, and I'm a mother who's dedicated to trying to understand motherhood more so that I can do better for my son, who copy paste is also autistic, and also I suspect with ADHD, because those party tricks like to go together. Uh, so I'm grateful because I do feel very connected to my son in a way that I don't feel with other people. And I can also provide some road mapping, some guidelines of like what worked for me and what are some strategies that absolutely he can get, and only he and I can get in our household. So it's been a journey for sure. But I view it as like the breath of fresh air that I always knew I wanted, but I guess maybe I was afraid to take, and now I have to find that and become the best version of myself, because my son needs it, and for me to be the best mother to an autistic son, I have to.
Mm. Beautifully said, Natasha. And then Elena.
Hi, I'm having a few technical issues, so I actually didn't hear anything that Natasha said. I'm gonna say what I'll say and then I'll pop back. I'll try a different browser and pop back on. So if I go off for a bit, that's where I'm just testing it all out. But my answer to your question was, so I was 25 when I received my autism diagnosis, and up until that point, it had been many, many years of just being told, it was anxiety. And so when you're feeling like this alien on Earth, and the only answer you're ever being given is anxiety, and everyone or a lot of people around me have also been told they also have anxiety, but I'm not feeling the same. I guess you just learn to kind of get on with it. And so for me, I guess that really presented in very, very high masking, learning the neurotypical ways of functioning, looking people in the eye, trying to succeed as best I could until I burnt out essentially and experienced depression for the first time in my life at 21. And at that point, it was kind of a race against time, trying to find a better answer than anxiety before I gave up on life in general. And so the journey to get that diagnosis was rough. I think getting that diagnosis has allowed for me to, I guess, take some of the pressure off of myself, not be so hard on myself, but it it just means, I suppose, trying to know the real me. That's where am struggling, is where does the mask end and where do I begin? And so the diagnosis gave me a framework to work with, and now it's just about, yeah, trying to unpack 25 years or longer, I suppose, of who I actually am underneath all of this. Yeah.
Mm. Oh, I see a lot of heads nodding. Yeah, Elena, very, very resonant. Thank you. And then, yeah, Elena, if you want to jump out and jump back in, and we'll see if we can get you a little more connected.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, so Elena had mentioned masking. Why don't we transition to some coping skills? And maybe let's share some negative coping skills, just so there's awareness around it. Coach Jennifer, you had mentioned alcohol as a negative coping skill. And then also, what are some positive ones you've done to replace that? And Coach Jennifer, let's kick off with you.
Yeah. Drinking was definitely not a good coping skill, and it was the only one that I knew. So I had to, and talk about masking. I mean, I spent, my days masking and my nights drinking, and it's like, who even are you, right? So kind of peeling back the layers and learning to understand, like, what do I actually like when I'm not trying to be something for somebody else? Like, how do I like to dress? What do I think is funny? It was like, I feel like a toddler, really. I mean, especially since removing alcohol. So learning new coping skills so that I can deal with some of the intense emotions that accompany ADHD, one of which is mindfulness. And I talk about this all the time in my social media and my coaching practice, learning how to be present in the moment versus worrying about what has already happened and I cannot change, or the future that hasn't happened yet that can become extremely overwhelming, or even if you're in a situation where you feel very overstimulated, to just learn how to pause, because there's between the trigger and the behavior, there's always space in between to pause. And it is a real skill. I didn't understand that when I first started practicing mindfulness, but it's like building a muscle. And so the more that you practice it, the more you're able to handle situations that come up that may stress you out or overwhelm you. So mindfulness has completely transformed my life.
Yeah, thank you. And then Natasha.
Yeah, absolutely. So negative coping skill, I would say probably predominantly in my life has been overeating, right? So using food as the way to comfort. And I think there's ties to that just generally in our society. That's an easy go-to, but culturally, my parents are from Jamaica. So Jamaican food and culture is very much surrounded around like, what are we eating? What are we drinking? And definitely was my go-to, right? Because I grew up feeling very lonely. Unless I spoke to someone, no one spoke to me. Not really understanding why people didn't really jive with me. But it's I've now come to understand that like your people are your people, and you don't have to chase, right? If you find yourself in spaces where you have to mask or you're showing up in regards to in terms to what other people are requiring, that those are probably not your people. Healthy coping skills, I think, for me has been definitely content creation, but also consumption. And I think that people, forget the phrase like you are what you consume or you are what you eat. That goes beyond food, right? You are what you consume, from podcasting, from articles, from blog posts, from social media feeds, like everything. Like when people think about ChatGPT, your output's as good as your input. So if you want to feel better, then you need to be speaking better and reading better and thinking better and surrounding yourself with better people to have that better outcome that you're looking for. So I've intentionally kind of very much reduce connection with family that I have found to be toxic or not helpful, right? Because if I'm leaving these experiences with people more drained than how I started, then that, again, that's an indication that that's not for you. And it's not something to shame yourself about. It's more like an indication, what's going on with that person, right? But again, if you're not a therapist, keep it moving. Right? Like you can't listen, we can't save everyone. So you have to save yourself. So that's one thing I've done. And then physical movement, right? And you can, if you, in whatever way that looks like for you, if you are able to go for a swim once a week, total game changer. If you are able and want to do a dance class, a gym class, like physical movement is a physical disruption of negative thought patterns and can very much be the game changer for, instead of spending all day speaking very poorly to yourself, which we can do, switch it up, go for a walk, go for a run, do a little dance, like do something physical to disrupt things for yourself. And then the third one is affirmations. I'm big on coming up with affirmations that just mean like something to me. And so you can definitely Google and find all sorts of ones, but I really like the process of creating my own custom affirmations and saying them and saying them out loud. Speak over wellness over yourself. Your body keeps score each and every time it hears something, feels something. try to be intentional around the connection and the relationship you have with your actual body, your own temple.
Mm. Yeah, I love that, Natasha. Thanks. And then, Elena, I see you're back. We were sharing what's a negative coping skill that you have used in the past, and then what's an example of a positive coping skill you replace it with?
Well, I think the first thing that jumps out to me when I think of the negative coping skill, that I think the ladies touched on, substances. I know how prevalent substance abuse is for neurodivergent people because it really does, I mean, definitely in my case, it really does take away this level of anxiety that I find is a comorbidity of my autism. So you can get really addicted to that. That feeling of, oh, this is what life is meant to feel like, without all this background chatter, right? And so understanding my relationship a little bit more with that is definitely something I'm in the process of doing. I definitely don't claim to be an autism advocate that has it all figured out. I definitely try to speak to I'm a work in progress and I'm figuring this out along with everybody else, and this is completely something I'm trying to understand my relationship with substances. In saying that, running has been something that I kind of fell into. And I know when a lot of people hear that, they go, oh, that's a lot of work. And I would have said the same thing. And I think the thing about running for me is there's nothing else you can focus on but the pain of your body. And every part of you wants to stop. Um, and what is the thing that makes you keep going? And that's your mind saying, "Well, just get to that post, just the next part, just one more kilometer." And that has grounded me a lot in my self trust. But more speaking to like in the moment tactic, I suppose, when I'm overthinking. A really great coping skill that I've talked about a lot is this imagery of when you're wrapped up in a spiral. So if I'm really nervous, say right now, oh, what's everyone thinking of me? How is everyone interpreting me? In the moment, I can visualize myself getting this book, reading this book title that says, this is the social anxiety title. Oh, my book loves to read this title all the time. And I guess it removes me from I'm not the thought, it's my brain choosing to always read this thought, the social anxiety. And so that's kind of a funny little way that I'm able to kind of poke fun at my brain a little bit, and it's a really great coping skill for anxiety.
Oh, I love that, Elena. Yeah, I love the creativity there. And then in terms of like maybe say apps or books, resources, like is there anything? I know you all create amazing content. Do you have any inspirations of like people that, yeah, our group should like follow or books they should read? Anything that inspired you on your journey?
I can start if no one else. Oh, there we
Oh,
go.
I was
Go
just
ahead.
going to
Go
pull
ahead.
up a book.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Share.
Can you see? Scattered Minds, Gabor Mate.
Mm.
It's controversial because he talks a lot about how ADHD specifically can be due to trauma. And some people, there is a genetic component, but he thinks that, it can be cured. And I don't necessarily think that it can or needs to be cured, but I think it's really interesting his take on the fact that we develop these coping skills or lack of coping skills due to trauma. But I think it's really interesting especially if you're late diagnosed ADHD, to check out that book. Sorry to
Wow.
interrupt you.
No,
No.
you're good. So since ADHD is definitely a topic of hand, I think a book that I really loved, I don't know if y'all ladies have read it, is A Radical Guide for Women with ADHD. I loved listening to this audiobook because it was just I was listening and I was like, "Ooh, this is like ministry." Like it was just speaking to my whole heart, and especially about like the negative self-talk that attaches to folks with ADHD. That's really, really hard. And then a book that I always recommend in my sessions for some folks who are here is The Slight Edge. I don't know if you all have read that one, but that's another great book. So I'll drop that in the chat. And those are my top three.
I would say the book that jumps out to me when I was kind of trying to piece together my identity after the diagnosis was Different Not Less by Chloe Hayden. That one's really good for, I think, the late diagnosed female. Um, Definitely speaks to that experience. And the creator that I find really helpful, who touches on such specific, very niche experiences that I thought I was the only one that experienced, and there's someone else kind of talking my thoughts out loud. Is I think her name is Neurodivergent Lou. Um, I would say a lot of people in the chat would know her because she's a very big creator. But yeah, those would be my best recommendations.
Mm, yeah, thank you, thank you. We love resource sharing on ShareWell. And now I have some kind of speaker specific questions. So, Natasha, I'd love to start with you. So, you are a DEI advocate, seasoned in the workforce on diversity, equity, and inclusion. What systematic changes do you think could help reduce stigma around neurodiversity?
Mm. Ah, starting off heavy hitter. I like it. Okay, so let's go. So when it comes to changing the landscape for workforce, first we have to have jobs to have a workforce. I don't know what employers are doing right now, but we are going through it in this economy. So we'll see what Christmas looks like. I'm praying for people, but I would say first and foremost, we would have to have the executive, the top level, right? Because it's always top down. So really getting the CEO, the top level of any organization to sit down and really get a real understanding from them as to like what are their objectives for this organization and how they see people fitting into that. Because you can talk as much as you want around, we want inclusion, we want different folks, but like if you're not really interested in dealing with the the added benefits of bringing different people to the party, then you're always going to have HR issues, you're going to have communication mishaps, you're going to have people being let go for things that they didn't need to necessarily get let go for. And so real clarity around what diversity, inclusion, and equity is going to look like at that organization. And then you're going to need a strong HR team and you're going to need some culture champions to help build out a program for what's going to happen. Because again, DEI or making space for neurodiverse folks is not held by one person because everyone that works at an organization is a part of the culture. So that means everyone's responsible for that culture. So you need to have an understanding of like, what do we want to do, right? So for some orgs, that's like a employee resource group. That can be really helpful. That's a space where it's employee led. They come together, they have a little budget, hopefully, and they do a book club here and there. They bring in speakers, they do trainings, right? And that could be the level of culture that's needed. But for other orgs, it may be more severe that's needed. It may be ongoing trainings that are needed. There may need to be some coaching that's involved. But it's going to take strategy. It's going to take real commitment. It's going to take funding. This is not something that's free. And then it's going to take spaces like this where are we sending our employees? Because again, you're neurodivergent 9 to 5, but you're also neurodivergent after 5 o'clock and before 9 a.m. Right? So like, what is the holistic support that's happening for employees so that they are showing up to focus on what they need to do, but they're being supported as a human to be able to do what they do on the job.
Yeah, Natasha, thank you. Mic drop moment. And I believe, Natasha, you have also some resources on your website as
Mhm.
well. If
Oh,
people
yeah.
want to dive a little deeper. Yeah, thank you so much for that.
Mhm.
Um, and then let's go, Jennifer, to you next. I know that you're a coach, and in your coaching practice, you predominantly coach neurodivergence. And so I'm curious, is there any pattern that you see amongst your clients, and what wisdom do you give them to overcome this? And maybe it's something a little less known. Yeah.
Um, well, my coaching practice is very niche because I coach late diagnosed ADHD adults who have been self medicating either alcohol, drugs, or other addictive behaviors. So we're pretty niched in there. So that's the common theme. It's like using unhealthy coping strategies that have maybe worked for many, many years, and then they start to hurt more than they are helping. So this person's in a bind. It's like part of their identity has been, being a social butterfly and going out for drinks all the time. How do they change how they move through the world? And you know it one of the things that is so common is that people think it's about the behavior. It's about like, oh, I just love drinking, or I just love shopping, or I love scrolling. It's never really about the behavior. It's about the thinking. I always say it's not a drinking problem, it's a thinking problem. It's all about reframing the way you see what that substance is actually doing for you, and changing some of those subconscious beliefs that we have about the substance or about the behavior, right? Because some of these beliefs that we have are just, we've been indoctrinated, right? I mean, especially when you think about alcohol, it's everywhere, right? It's like you can't leave your house without being bombarded with messages about how great alcohol is. It's like this magic elixir for every occasion. And to start to become really aware of how we're almost propagandized, we're brainwashed to believe that this is necessary for, a good social life and to just be a normal person. And the truth is, it's not. And once you start to sort of challenge your beliefs about what the substance or what the behavior is actually doing for you, then you start to see it in a different way, and you can't unsee it. Once I started realizing how dangerous alcohol really is, how much it was destroying my organs and my brain and my, every part of my body, I'm like, I don't want to put that substance into my body anymore. But it takes time to sort of change the way you see those behaviors and see those substances.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for that honesty, Jennifer. Really appreciate it. Yeah. And then Elena, so I know that your story really focuses on late diagnosis. And I'm curious, what's one thing that you wish more people understood about the late diagnosis experience?
I think the biggest thing that jumps out to me when you say that is delayed adolescence. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me. I'm getting a few pop-ups. Yeah, yeah, all good. Um, so I'm currently 29 years old, and I would say that it has taken the majority of my 20s to actually get to a place that people my age were at 5 years ago, maybe. I'm only now starting to see, the value of money and, really looking at my future, because I guess when you have gone without answers as to what you were dealing with for so long, you kind of almost give up on your future. That's too uncertain. You're just in survival mode, right? There is no time to explore identity or, university education, employment, because the the success of the week might have just been showering or getting through the whole week without a breakdown. And so in a way, I think that my identity has really been delayed. I would say that how I have lived my life, definitely this year might be closer to those, yeah, 5 years younger than me. And so this is such a big thing for the late diagnosed person. Just to know that they're on their own journey, they're on their own timeline, and that is definitely something I would love, definitely my family members to kind of understand a lot more too. Is, I know that I'm not up to where I should be or where society thinks I should be, but I've been dealing with all these mental health issues and just coming into myself. I'm only there now at 29, and so yeah, just don't be so hard on yourself if you're um yeah, just learning about yourself at a later point.
Mm, beautifully said. And then we're going to transition to Q&A in about 5 minutes. So if y'all have any questions, start posting them in the chat and then I'll collect them and then we'll bring you up to ask our speakers. And you can ask the group or ask a specific speaker. Great. Yeah, let's get those questions coming in. Okay, so this is a good transition. Elena, I love what you shared about, having more understanding from your family or maybe your peer group, your friends. And so I'm curious to people who want to be better allies in the audience. What's a concrete way that you think allies can better support neurodivergent friends, loved ones, etc.?
I think that every single person is so different, and what might work for me, another neurodivergent person might not have those same struggles. But the most validating question that I was ever asked by by a friend of mine was, I can see that you're struggling. How can I best support you? And that was one of the most incredible things that I had ever been asked, because first off, they were seeing me. I was allowing them to see my struggle, which I don't ever do typically. Um, but for them to have this openness to understand, and I think that that's where so much is lacking in the world. Is the world has preconceived ideas about what autism is. I mean, I definitely do not fit the typical mold of that. And so I guess setting the stage of how can I help, it gives me room to think, oh my gosh, how do I need that support? So that for me personally was one of the most validating questions I think you could ever ask me. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And Coach Jennifer, what about you? How do you think we can be better allies, or what questions can we ask?
I think just being curious and not being afraid to ask how we can be supported. I think like for some reason they're like people tiptoe around, like pretend that it's not real and that, it's taboo to speak about somehow, which it is not. And anybody that shows any type of curiosity or like Elena was just saying, like ask the question, how can I support you? It means the world. It sounds so simple, but it makes a big difference, especially if we've been moving through the world not getting the help that we need and being afraid to ask because of the response that we're afraid to receive. I mean, I have parents that are in their 80s and they still you know don't believe in ADHD. They don't believe in it. They think that everybody's a little HD. Even though I do this for a living, they make fun of me. So it's like I don't understand why that is, even with people that supposedly care about me. So I think the littlest gesture you can make to try to understand what this person is going through makes all the difference.
Yeah, I totally hear that. I would say, I'll throw in a little bit of a wrench here in that. So I think there's cultural differences here that play a part in how we operate and navigate. So, growing up, I grew up with a mom who never asked for help, right? So the idea of asking for help was not something that was modeled to me. It is not something I'm comfortable doing. Will I do it for my son? Absolutely. I will be mama bear. I will give them New York energy as much as needed to get whatever he needs. But for myself, harder journey. And so I would say, I love allyship. To me is a person trying to take the time to understand me. What are the things that motivate me? What are the things that I'm comfortable with? And then trying to make space to hear me, not to hear me to correct something, not to hear me to judge something, but to really hear me. And to what Coach Jennifer was saying, yeah, like family can be, it's so interesting. Like they say that the people closest to you are the people that hurt you the most, right? Because they know you the most. And so they know what to say and not say that will like totally devastate you in a way that others can. And I tell my parents all the time, I'm like, strangers are nicer to me than you. Gosh, darn it. Like, this is ridiculous. But I would say people who, like for me, the question, I don't know if the other panelists here feel this, but like, I hate the question, how are you? I feel like it's such an unsafe question because no matter how I'm doing, you can't do anything about it. So don't ask me that, right? Because I feel like it's a question that has an answer that it's futile. It just goes into the ether. Rather, ask me what I'm watching. Ask me what I thought about the last episode of The Summer I Turned Pretty. Let's really engage. Like, don't ask me crazy questions about how I'm feeling. That's not for today. Let's talk about what we're listening to. So someone who I feel like a good ally is someone who knows that about me and is like, girl, what are we talking? Let's talk about Bad Bunny, right? Like they're going to come to me about content. They're going to come to me about an article. They're going to come to me about what's happening, in the legal system, like something that I can attach to, something that I can safely speak to. And then they know that if I am going through something, I will then, meander and the ADHD will thrive and we'll get there. But don't come at me with that because that's not a safe place for me to be in initially.
Thanks for that, Natasha. Great perspective.